The unexamined life is not worth living. These famous words were spoken by Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher. Yes, he was considered as the father of Western thought. Socrates never wrote a book, but he asked tough questions. Questions that force people to think deeply about their values, deeply about their choices and their purpose. Socrates believed that without reflection, people live like sleepwalkers. Sleepwalkers, yeah, that is going through life on autopilot, unaware of what truly matters. He challenged people not just to exist, but to live consciously. That statement that he said, the unexamined life is not worth living, wasn't made in a classroom. He didn't say that in a classroom or in a church auditorium or in a theater. It was said, or it was made when he was in court, facing trial for corrupting the youth and rejecting the state goals. That was a trial like death sentence. He was given the choice, either to stay silent and leave, or speak the truth and die. What would you have done? He chose the truth. He chose the truth because Socrates, he believes that a life without self-reflection, self-awareness wasn't truly living. It was just breathing. And here's where it becomes timeless. In every generation, just like ours, we face that same choice. We can live by default or live by design. Today, I want to invite you into that kind of examined life. But not just through philosophy alone. We are coming to look at that through scriptures, real transformation, and practical self-reflection. When Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living, he wasn't just condemning people who make mistakes or live quietly. He was pointing to something deeper. Yes, something very deep. Tragedy of going through life without ever stopping to ask the hard questions. Have you ever asked yourself these questions? Who am I really? Why do I do what I do? What do I believe? And what I believe in, is it really true? An unexamined life is where we float from season to season, job to job, relationship to relationship, but never pause to investigate the patterns in our thinking. Yes, we never stop to investigate the motives behind our actions or the wounds we've buried. It's a life driven by reaction instead of intention. Yes, success, busyness, and even religion can become distractions if we truly or never ask those questions. We need to ask ourselves, what is shaping me? And is it leading me towards the person I was created to be? In that kind of life, we become prisoners of routine. Yes, we just chasing things, going up and down our routine without self-reflection. We conform to what culture celebrates or expect of us, even if it doesn't align with our values. Because it's a norm, we just go by it. We avoid discomfort, so we avoid the truth. We entertain ourselves into numbness, and before we know it, we've built a life that looks full on the outside but feels hollow on the inside. Unexamined life may be proactive. Okay, we need to make it productive. It may even be praised, but deep down it lacks peace, because peace doesn't come from doing more. It comes from knowing why you are doing whatever you're doing. This is where introspection becomes sacred. Yes, it becomes sacred because self-examination isn't just about self-awareness. It's about alignment. It's about making sure the life we are living lines up with the life we are meant for. It's about noticing the gap between who we are and who we are becoming, and having the courage to do something about it. Now, you may ask, why introspection is essential to personal growth and leadership? Let's break it down. Introspection is not just an occasional act of sitting with your thoughts. It is the discipline of turning inward to confront the truth, not outward, inward to confront your truth. It's the courageous act of pausing long enough to ask, what drives me? What's holding me back? What habits are destroying me in secret? What gifts am I ignoring out of fear? For personal growth to be authentic and sustainable, it must begin within. Yes, it must always begin within yourself. Leadership doesn't start with leading others. You can't just start getting up and leading others. It starts with leading yourself. And you can't lead yourself unless you know yourself. So the question is, do you know yourself? Look, without introspection, we become reactive rather than responsive, ambitious but unanchored. The Bible mirrors this truth repeatedly, yes, in 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5. And Paul writes, examine yourself to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Paul wasn't speaking to people who had rejected God or are not going to church. He was speaking to the believers. Yes, he was speaking to the believers in the church. He was telling them and reminding them that spiritual maturity isn't automatic. It doesn't come just like that. It comes through intentional self-awareness and reflection by asking hard questions like, is Christ truly at the center of my life? Or am I just going through the motions of belief? Another powerful example in the Bible is Psalm 139, verse 23 to 24. And David cries out by saying, search me, O Lord, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. David was a king, as we all know in the Bible, as well as a warrior and a leader. Yet he understood that the greatest threat to leadership doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. That's why he said, search me, O Lord, himself. His plea wasn't for more power or protection. It was for clarity, conviction, alignment with God's will. Look, great leaders are great not because they have all the answers. No, we are never perfect or 100% perfect human beings, but because they live with deep, uncomfortable honesty. They face their blind spots. Yes, they deal with the parts of themselves that others ignore. They admit weakness. As a leader, you need to admit weakness, but not to dwell in shame, but to grow in strength. Let me give you a powerful real-life illustration. Let's look at someone like Nelson Mandela. Yes. Before becoming a symbol of global peace and justice, did you know that Mandela spent 27 years in prison? That time in the Robben Island, it wasn't just physical confinement that he was in. Okay, it became a place where he started this introspection. He wrestled with anger, his motive, and his purpose. Mandela later said, I had to examine my heart before I could fight for the soul of a nation. That was very powerful. His leadership after prison was radically different. It marked not by vengeance, but by grace, forgiveness, and long-term vision. I would have come, or you would have come, annoyed and angry to go and act on that. But he did not. He examined himself deeply. Let's look at Lecrae Moore, a Christian hip-hop artist and a leader. Lecrae, known for his raw honesty, once admitted that for years he built a successful ministry and career while secretly struggling with unresolved trauma and identity confusion. Okay, he said, I was performing righteousness while ignoring my pain. He ignored something that was deep within, but rather exhibiting something outwardly. It wasn't until he went through therapy, self-reflection, and spiritual re-evaluation that he truly began healing. And he could lead others from a place of truth after the healing instead of an image, in righteousness while inwardly he had pain. So what about you? We live in a world obsessed with productivity but allergic to pause. We build platforms before building character. You need to build a character first before you build the platform. But without examination, growth is cosmetic, not internal. And without internal growth, leadership becomes performance. Yes. Let's look at something that Jesus said in Luke chapter 6 verse 45. It is written that a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full. And it's other verses says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Leadership, okay, will eventually reveal your inner life. So don't wait for crisis to examine yourself. Make it. Remember, self-examination isn't about shame. It's about realignment. When you stop and ask yourself questions through reflection, you aren't just identifying what's wrong with you. You are uncovering what's possible. You are stepping into ownership with God, letting Him reveal not only the places that need healing, but also the caves you've buried under fear, comparison, or busyness. So you see, it starts from the inside. Transformation doesn't happen through imitation, no. It happens through examination and renewal. You may be leading a family, a ministry, a team, or even just yourself right now. But wherever you are, you cannot become who you were created to be without learning to look within with both honesty and hope. So let's pause for a moment, okay? Let's pause for a moment. Here are 3 reflective questions I want you to reflect on, and I believe it's going to guide you on your journey toward a more examined and intentional life. It is very important. You can pause the video and reflect on each question, or you can put them down in your journal. Then afterwards, you can reflect on them during your quiet time. 1. What am I doing regularly that no longer aligns with who I want to become or who God has called me to be? This question relates to something like it could be a habit, a relationship, thought, or a pattern, or even the hidden fear. Okay, so just take your time to reflect on this question. Search in your heart to do that. 2. Do I live more by reaction than reflection? Ask whether your choices are intentional, okay, or simply conditioned by past pain, societal pressure, or routine. 3. What would it look like if I lead at home, work, or ministry? Not from image or insecurity, but from an examined place of truth, humility, and purpose. Imagine the peace and power that would flow from such a life. So I want you to reflect on these 3 questions. Then you get to know yourself better. As Socrates taught, the scripture confirms, the examined life is the only life that leads to truth, transformation, and real leadership. Not a life that is perfect, no, not a busy life, a purposeful one. So I want you to pause, reflect, and let God meet you wherever you are. And remember, you are not your past. You are not your performance. You are who God says you are. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share with someone who is ready to stop surviving and start living intentionally. Remember, this is purpose-driven channel where your story finds meaning and your faith finds direction. Until next time, live examined, live transformed, live on purpose. Love you all.